Well, in case you missed it, Oprah Winfrey was in the spotlight this week because of an interview with NYAD. The controversy stems from NYAD's explanation as to how she is both an atheist and someone in awe of humanity and a deeply spiritual person. Winfrey replied, "I think if you believe in the awe and wonder and the mystery, that is what God is. It's not a bearded guy in the sky." So to talk about some of these top topics that were in the headlines and on the Twitter sphere, we are joined by our panel. And talk to me about when you heard these comments. A lot of people criticized, actually, Oprah Winfrey for questioning her. Dee Dee?
Yeah, I mean, why was she saying this? I mean, not long ago, Oprah called a shopkeeper in Zurich a racist because she wouldn't show her a $38,000 bag. So that was sort of out there, really. I mean, what made her a racist and not showing her the bag? And then here she is, kind of criticizing her, making her own opinion. Well, if this woman is spiritual, that's what God's all about. That's not for her to say. I mean, I think it's being very critical, and she's making herself sort of a deity. So yeah, I think she's over the top.
Okay.
Can I say a couple things about awe, which is a very interesting word with regard to religion and God and spirituality. Einstein believed that the way you would believe in God was to recognize the magnificence and hugeness of the universe. And he said if you would be in temple or church or whatever and just experience the awe, that's what you should worship. Moreover, among Jews, when they celebrate Yom Kippur, those days are called the days of awe. So
but
it's been around for a long
deeply
time.
personal. I guess the question was, did Oprah Winfrey put her own personal beliefs into this interview?
Yeah, I think that's where the problem comes up. And I agree with Dee Dee on this one, because I think that she could have handled it differently. She could have handled it in a way where sensitive to all aspects when it comes to religion. Who's an atheist? Who's a Christian? Who isn't? And I think she put herself into the mix more than it needed to be done. And I think that's where I come down on this one.
And I certainly do agree with the word awe as it comes to religion. And I am reflecting some of my own personal beliefs, but in terms of an interview, I have to agree with Dee Dee and Dr. Bart. I'm not sure
why be a critic? I mean, she was being a critic. She criticized 2 or 3 groups, basically.
Why put yourself into a religious issue? I mean, I don't get that.
Well, they say don't talk about top politics and religion, but that's what we're doing.
Exactly what we're talking about.
That's what we do here.
But all right, now we're also talking about we're coming up, of course, next week is the 1-year anniversary of the superstorm that changed so many millions of lives. We're here, and just Dr. Bart, millions of people change the way they live their lives now who live near the water. Psychologically, Sandy really was the storm of all storms.
Yeah, I think there's actually a comparison perhaps with 9/11 and Sandy in a different way, obviously, but with Sandy, I mean, we're thinking about the world a little bit differently. I don't think you can say that there's climate change just because of any one event, although I certainly believe in climate change. But I think that people are much more sensitive about where they live, their vulnerability, if you will, and also the problems that actually happen when a disaster like this takes place, and you know very much about that.
Yeah, I mean, I just finished the book Surviving Sandy, and I will say that one of the things that a lot of people didn't talk about with this storm is, places like Haiti that lost 1/3 of their crops. I mean, it was just amazing. Of course, we're here in the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut area, so we focus more primarily on that. But in terms of global warming, Dr. Kuby, if you could just talk to me a little bit about, people's perceptions now. I think Sandy really kind of knocked it home that there may be a change going on.
It did. I've been studying the media coverage of global warming, and I've given talks in the last month in New Orleans, Denver, and San Francisco. And we've turned a corner with global warming. I think it's a good turn because people have needed to recognize for a while that the human cause is a big part of it. And the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, which is the organization that got the Nobel Prize with Al Gore, now estimate that it's 95% likely that human activity has caused global warming. But that's been an issue for a while with members of the other party than my own. One problem has been in the past something I would call naive equivalence, where in news media try and sound like they're on both sides of the issue. They want to sound like they're fair. But for a long time they would give voice to global warming and then someone else would say, well, I don't think it exists. They're starting to turn around. I think it's becoming accepted just since the storm, the fires in Yosemite this summer. People are starting to believe something is going on.
Well, let me ask you a question. Is it the media coverage? And I'm going to ask Dee Dee that question also. Is it the media coverage? Because we do have the 24/7 news cycle. We always did have storms. We always did have... Dee Dee?
Yeah, I don't believe in global warming at all, and I don't think people who went through Sandy are thinking about global warming right now. I think they're thinking about the flood insurance, they're thinking about getting their lives back together, their businesses, putting the roofs on their houses. Global warming is so not on their mind, I'm sorry, but I don't think it's connected at all. And I think most people don't think it's connected.
Why do all these major scientists who know 10 times more
Because
than
they're
you
scientists.
and I, because they're
that's the
scientists.
Let me
thing.
ask Dee Dee a question.
But we're talking
Well,
about
as a-
Sandy and the relevance. I think these people are
Okay.
thinking about their own lives. They're not thinking about global warming.
Well, what I don't get is that you can measure carbon in the air. Carbon in the air, as a psychologist, I'm not an expert in that, but I can say psychologically, if you can measure something that's
Absolutely.
1,000 times greater in the last 100 years, who else but
What do you
man
mean?
would
Where do you
account for
get
that?
to connect to Sandy
I don't
and
get
global
that.
warming? I mean, I think that's just absurd. I mean, it's just so
Well,
far.
those
Well,
carbon
I'll tell you what,
particles-
we're going to go on to our next subject. I mean, we could go on to global warming and spend probably
And
an
then
entire
might be
show
more
on
warmth.
that. But it is the weekend, of course, everybody. So maybe you're thinking about a good movie. Well, for the State Department employees, you have the green light. Here's the story behind that. Ever since WikiLeaks began releasing thousands of classified documents, State Department employees were forbidden from visiting the website without authorization. But they are now being given the okay to watch the hotly anticipated WikiLeaks drama, Fifth Estate. And it's gotten some incredible reviews this past week. One of the movies that's going to be on your list, Dr. Bart?
I don't know about this one. I don't know. I think it might be interesting, but I think there's a few others out there that I might like to see. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm a little ambivalent about this one.
Yeah, I definitely want to go see it because, you know, that's a topic of conversation. It was such a big deal, and it'll be interesting to check out and see what their spin is on it.
Yeah, it's gonna. I mean, it's certainly. I was surprised by the very favorable reviews that came out about it. So it'll be interesting to see how they play both sides on this one. Thoughts, Dr. Kuby?
Well, I actually teach some film courses, but I don't review films and say what I think of them without seeing them. Even if sometimes when I've read a lot, I will say this: if A.O. Scott of the New York Times really likes it, I can almost guarantee you I will, because I agree with him almost always. The only person I agree with more on film reviewing is me. I find for some strange reason, when I see a film and I really like it, I find that I agree with myself.
That's the way that works.
Good one. Very good.
All right. Well, we are now going to turn to the Titanic. And if you didn't hear the news, there was a violin that sold on Saturday for more than $1.4 million. Now, the violin, here's the story behind this one. It was Wallace Hartley's name is believed to have been found at sea with the musician's body. Now, of course, the story goes that as the ship was sinking, the orchestra played the hymn Nearer, My God, to Thee, and were hailed as heroes for sacrificing their chances of escape and keeping the spirits up as the passengers boarded the lifeboats. It's just such an incredible story.
It is.
I mean, just to hear that. I actually worked with Bob Ballard. Folks who know my background, I did teach marine biology. But so when I was very close to many of the artifacts from the Titanic, but this just, you know, the fact that it was strapped to his body and the story behind them, but certainly a pretty hefty price tag.
How did it become strapped? I missed that part.
That's how they found the violin, strapped to his
Oh,
body.
maybe he strapped it to himself.
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
Ah, I see.
Oh,
Okay.
I think so inspiring and love history, and that they found this artifact is priceless. So, you know, it's no surprise that it brought so much money.
It was the highest priced item from the Titanic, and that's why it made so many. I guess because of obviously what you
meaning,
said, the meaning and everything like that. Just any thoughts, Dr. Kuby?
Well, it's a titanic amount of money they're paying.
So you're not going to go out and buy the violin for.
I used to play the guitar quite badly.
Okay.
So that's the best
Well,
I
maybe
can
you
do.
can strap it to yourself
and,
one day.
and Dr.
go
Barr,
find
just
you with it.
for why somebody would want that big, I mean, it's a piece of history, but so are many of the other artifacts.
Because the story of the Titanic is so fascinating. I find it gripping as a psychologist. It's just like an emotional event that happened that it never goes away. Anytime I hear something about the Titanic, I want to look at that. I want to see it. I want to read about it. And I think many people are like that. So that's why I probably got that kind of money. And as a psychologist, I could see that. I could feel that.
So if you had the 1.4 million, Dr. Bart would be signing up for
Put it someplace in there.
I'll buy it with